Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me at all at the back? Can you hear me at the back? No? Can you hear me at the back? Is that any better? Okay, I'll try and shout and lean over. My name's Associate Professor Ashraf Haque, and I'm here to welcome you to the Doherty Institute for Infection and Immunity's Student Information Session. It's wonderful to see you all here this late afternoon, just as 4:30 ITIS kicks in and everyone wants to have a little nap. So I'm very grateful that most of you are still awake at this time. I do. Maybe I'll try that one instead. I would like to start by... Hello, can you hear me? Is that better? Okay. I want to, of course, acknowledge that the university acknowledges the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander traditional custodians of the land on which we work and learn. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and the place of Indigenous knowledge in the Academy. You're going to hear from me for a couple of minutes just to give you a bit of background about the Doherty Institute. Then I'm going to pass over to Professor Scott Mueller, who's going to tell you more details about the various courses that you can enroll on. And then we really want to pass to a range of current and past students, so you can hear their experiences and also question them about those experiences. So, a quick short history of the Doherty Institute is actually a joint venture between two entities, the University of Melbourne and the Royal Melbourne Hospital. We house approximately 1,000 scientists, educators and clinicians, and we're really focused on infectious diseases, and also immunity and immunological responses. So the institute is approximately it's over a decade old, and but it's getting bigger. So you may have noticed if you look around the corner, there's actually a building site, and that is going to house a place called the Australian Infectious Diseases Institute. I think I've got that wrong, but the AIID that will house the expansion of Doherty. It's going to house the Burnett Institute, which is currently across town. They're coming over to join us. It's going to house an expansion of facilities, clinical trial facilities. It's going to house the Cummings Global Center for Pandemic Therapeutics. So we are a vibrant environment, and we are not shrinking. We are getting substantially bigger. This is just a very brief kind of description of who we are and what we do. Each column really highlights the 4 pillars of what the Doherty does. Of course, we have immunology, and as an immunologist, I would say that's of course the most important cornerstone pillar in the building. But of course, I'd be lying. There are other things that are moderately important, like viral infectious diseases that some of you may have had in this recent winter, whether it's COVID or RSV. Thank you for coughing, whoever that was. COVID, influenza, of course. We have deep interest in bacterial and parasitic infections, and one of the major crises in global health that we are in the middle of is antimicrobial resistance to some of our drugs. So that's really the panoply of what we do. Now, along the horizontal, what we have are disciplines. How do we study what we study? And I'm not going to go through all of them, but suffice to say, we go from fundamental or discovery research through to engaging with our communities, public health, global health. Of course, we have to teach our communities, and that's really, we have some world-leading teachers. Some of you are on their courses as undergraduates, and we have interest in Indigenous health, and we exist in a completely new environment in the last probably decade, where computers are essential for everything we do. And so computer science and it's how it relates to genomics and genomic-based studies are a critical discipline within the institute. So that's just a very brief summary of who we are. But you're here to find out about the different courses that we run, principally honours courses, master's courses, and PhDs. And so I'm going to pass over to Professor Scott Mueller to talk in greater depth about that.
I think I can use this, right?
Yeah, you're louder than I am. So.
I think that's a bit hard. Hello, everyone. So I think what I'd like to do is to cover some of the course-specific information. I'm assuming that most people are here because you're interested in potentially doing honours or potentially doing masters. And there's a lot of choices, not just in the type of projects you might do, but also in the type of course you might do, and it involves very different aspects. But before you think about the courses, it's worth thinking about why you would do it and what you might gain from doing honours or masters, particularly here in the Doherty Institute, through the Department of Microbiology and Immunology principally. And so really what we'd be looking at asking ourselves is, what do I want to get out of it? And so part of that might be just to learn more about the topic areas of microbiology, immunology, infectious diseases, and health. And that if any of those topics or all of those topics are of interest, then this is clearly a fantastic place to do that. But if you're going to do honours or masters, you're going to learn a lot more than that. You're going to learn aspects of how to be a researcher, how to do science, how to embed yourself in real research, not the sort of research you may have already encountered in the prac lab space, which is very contrived, so to speak. Generally, we know what's going to happen or not happen. You're going to get down into a lab and do actual research, which may or may not work, but it's going to teach you what it's really like, and that's the fun part of it. But it's also going to allow you to start to enhance your ability to think critically, not just about science, but in life in general, which means you can apply those skills to anything you do in life. And in particular, if you go through and do honours or masters, there'll be a lot of communication involved, both verbal and written, and a lot of what you learn through doing honours or masters is how to be a much better communicator than you may have been taught to do so thus far in your undergraduate degrees. Now, a lot of people come and ask if they need to have done very specific majors or very specific subjects in order to do certain projects within honours or masters. And in general, the answer is no. If you've done a life science degree, which is what most of you will have done if you're here, you will be able to pick a project in many different disciplines. So, for instance, you might decide there's a particular immunology project that you're really interested in. You don't absolutely have to have done an immunology major. It will help, it will make it easier, because you will already know a lot, but it's not an absolute requirement. Certain projects will specify some degree of information that you may need to know, but in general, you don't need to have done very specific majors to look at all kinds of different projects. Really, it's a matter of just discussing what your interests are with potential supervisors and working it out that way. So, you don't need to have specific lab experience when you start honours or masters. That's the point of it, is to teach you that. You'll learn how to become part of a research team, and you'll gradually become an expert in your own area, depending on the project question. But what's really important is going through the process, you'll have coursework and you'll have lab work. You'll learn how to manage your own time more effectively. It won't be just laid out for you. You'll have tasks and you have to figure out your own time management, how to think about your tasks critically, how to work independently. Now, that doesn't mean you'll be just thrown in the corner and told to go ahead in the beginning. You'll get a lot of guidance. But as you go through the end of the honours year or through masters, you'll be becoming very independent in what you do, and you'll be able to plan and execute the experiments yourself as you go along. But also, science is very collaborative, so we expect that anyone who comes in as an honours or master's students will work as part of a team. You'll work with other students, you'll work with the staff and researchers to get things done. And as part of that, learning how to communicate, to talk about the scientific problems and what it is you're trying to do and figure out solutions together is part of what you'll learn as well. I'm not really going to dwell on this so much. Suffice to say that if you do honours or masters, there's a lot of other career options that will become available to you after that. So obviously one of the standard paths may be to go on and do a PhD and then a postdoc and become an academic researcher. That's great. I mean, I did it, so I'm happy to say that's great. But there's a lot of other options. People go off into all different fields having done honours or masters. It could be within the lab environment. It might be as a research assistant or in a clinical lab doing clinical trials. People go off and do just purely science communication or work in the media. Others go into different aspects of industry, and others go into government and law with the backgrounds that they've gained from doing honours or masters in the science fields. So I think the important thing that I want to cover today is to give you an overview of what the difference is between the courses on offer. You may already know some of this. I'll go relatively quickly. But if you're considering doing honours or masters, you will have done a Bachelor of Science or Bachelor of Biomedicine. For instance, honours is a 1-year degree, masters is a 2-year degree, so that's the obvious large differences between the two. The other being that honours is an undergraduate degree, whereas masters is a graduate course. So there's differences involved in fees and other structure that is important and related to that. A lot of students that are considering between the two options are considering, for instance, that honours is shorter and it can be a quick way to get into a PhD. If you do well in honours, you've only done a year and then you can start a PhD. And the scores required to get into a PhD are your honours year and your 3rd year marks of your undergraduate. And then if that allows you to meet the minimum and get into PhD, that's a quick path that allows you to do that. Other students are considering the fact that masters give you a bit longer to do the research and a bit longer to really embed yourself in science and figure out if that's what you want. It is also better recognised internationally as a degree than honours is. Honours is very clearly defined in Australia, but maybe less so overseas, so that's another consideration. But there are not that many Commonwealth-funded places for masters, and the benefits, though, is that often you can start at the beginning or the middle of the year if you want to do a master's degree in the Doherty, whereas for honours we only allow you to start at the beginning of the year. And if you're thinking about doing a PhD, master's is like a clean slate. The scores required to get into PhD and to get a PhD scholarship are only based on the masters in that instance. So for some students that's a consideration as well. But then the career paths beyond honours or masters are actually very similar. So they both can lead you in a similar direction. So the course offers here in the Institute, whether it be honours or masters, fall under essentially 2 streams. We have the microbiology and immunology stream, and we also have the pathology stream. Both are very similar in what you will get and what you will do. The focus is typically on slightly different project offerings. Indeed, for microbiology and immunology, we're focused on investigating the immune system and aspects of viral and bacterial infectious diseases and so forth. And pathology is focused a little bit more on biological mechanisms underpinning human diseases, but there's a lot of overlap between the 2 streams. So when you're looking at projects, you really should be considering both options, and both will give you a degree under the Doherty, within the Doherty umbrella, so to speak. There's several coordinators that coordinate these programs. There's several coordinators of our honours stream, which include Ash, who presented at the beginning, also Associate Professor Amy Chung, and through the pathology stream, Theo's here as well. And then there's a couple of coordinators, myself and Maria, who help coordinate the Masters in Microbiology and Immunology, and Theo also does the Masters in Pathology. So a lot of coordinators around to help guide the students and help answer any questions and make sure that if you do choose to do honours or masters with us, that there's a lot of support to help you make it a really good experience. Now, the course structure of these 2 choices are also very different. Honours being 1 year, you only have to do 75 points of research and 25 points of coursework. Masters being 2 years, it's a lot more than that. Both honours and masters do an initial subject called Introduction to Biomedical Research at the beginning of the course, and that teaches you about research integrity and ethics, how to keep appropriate lab records and reference, how to do statistics and design experiments, and how to write. So very important key skills that you need to learn are taught in both streams. Master's students then also complete a biomedical enterprise subject in the first semester. And then beyond that, whether you do honours or masters will dictate the specific coursework that you do in the rest of your course. And so for honours, you will be doing the biome subject that I just mentioned, but then you'll be doing a stream-specific coursework subjects, whether it be through the microbiology and immunology program or the pathology program, where you'll earn 12.5 points. And then the rest of the honours year is covered by the research project subjects, which are 75 points. Essentially, the microbiology stream, this coursework covers aspects of bacteriology and immunology and virology, but also how to read literature and how to think and how to evaluate scientific data and how to present things such as posters and so forth. And in a very similar vein, the pathology subject will undergo a series of tutorials and teach you a variety of skills as well as industry relevant skills through various written and oral assessments. So an approximate timeline, if you choose to do honours, you'll be coming in starting in February, and you'll do the coursework at the beginning of the year, and then the project subjects overlap with this and begin to ramp up. So you do more coursework at the beginning, less lab work, and then as you go through, you end up doing entirely lab work as the year progresses. And students will do towards the beginning of the middle of the year in June, an oral presentation to an audience and present what their project is and what it's all about. They'll write a literature review and submit that. And then in September, they'll finish up in the lab and then spend the last month writing a thesis, which after submission, they'll then undergo an oral examination and in early November typically, and that's the entirety of the year. So it's a pretty intense year from when you start in Feb all the way through to early November. It's non-stop, but it's, as you'll hear from some students, it's really a rewarding experience. So if you choose instead to do Master of Biomedical Science, whether it be in microbiology or pathology, the course structure involves a heavy loading of coursework towards the beginning of the degree in the first year. And as well as the mandatory subjects, you get to choose a bunch of different elective subjects in different areas of your interest. Typically, you'll load it up, so you'll do most of those in the first year and maybe one in the first semester of the second year. And then the research project will be inversely loaded, so you'll do more and more towards the second year. And as you go into that second year, you'll be doing almost entirely research in the lab. So it's really just a quite extended honours year in that sense. Now, that's a very quick overview of the subjects and the courses and what's involved. For all of it, the process of choosing a project and identifying a project and a supervisor are essentially the same. There's a lot of really exciting projects on the Doherty website. You can browse through, you can use search for keywords, search for people and so forth, and find the projects you're interested in. And then the most important thing you can do is to then contact the supervisors, send them your transcript and your CV, tell them in a concise way why you're interested in their project. Don't write 10 pages, just something that says why you liked their project and why you might want to work on that project. And then hopefully organise a time to talk to them if the project's still available. You can also talk to other lab members and students in the lab to get a feel for what the projects are like and what the lab's like. But it's essential to do this. No one is going to accept you into a lab and into a project if they haven't talked to you. So you can't just put in a preference, you really need to talk to the supervisors and figure out if that fit is right for you. It's a two-way street, and so the best success in Masters and Honours is if you talk to each other and you both feel like it's a good fit, and then you go ahead and make that decision from there. So for honours, you've got to apply, at least in the first round, by the end of October. There's a second round in January, but most projects get assigned in the first round. You need to list your top project preferences, up to 4, through the Sonia database by the 7th of November. And then students are ranked by their WAM. The minimum of 65 WAM entry, but then those that are eligible to enter, you're ranked by your WAM. And once the ranking is done, then the project preferences are sent to each individual department, such as us, for selection of the students. And the simple rule I'll suggest is that if you want to be in the Doherty, then you must choose projects from within the Doherty and within our departments and your top preferences, because most students get their first, or certainly at least their second preference. Although you put in 4, it's not often that it goes past the first couple. So if you're really excited about being in this space and doing this area, make sure your first preferences are from us. Masters is similar, but the entry application closing date is at the 30th of November. But similar to honours, you need to apply, you need to meet the minimum entry requirements that are ranked by the WAM, which is also a minimum of 65 entry. Slightly different though, you look for projects, you contact the supervisor, and together with the supervisor, you make a decision whether you want to choose to work with each other or not. And then if that's agreed, then you go through and apply in Sonia, and it's all done. It's not a preferencing system as it is for honours. So, as a summary, if you're interested in doing research in the Doherty, and you've done, for instance, a 3-year undergrad degree, then the microbiology and immunology or pathology infectious diseases pathways are very similar. You can choose to do a 1-year honours program, or you can do a 2-year Master of Biomedical Science program, and then the options after that are you might want to do a PhD. Some students do what's known as an MPhil by research as well in the Doherty in all of these different areas, and others then, instead of that, decide to go off into industry or to work in a lab. So there's a lot of options ahead of you if you choose to do one of the courses that we're offering.